Lime plastering, as promised. So, where do we start? Well, we start by prepping the walls. The ceilings, they're just going to be in a gypsum board, unfortunately. It's too big of a job to try and get the laths cleaned up enough to be able to redo in lime. However, the walls, that's fine. We're going to do all those in lime. And when I say lime, it doesn't involve any Portland cement, it doesn't involve any gypsum. This is purely a quick lime with a sand aggregate and animal hair. If you've never come across this before, you may find this video interesting. And if you're fancying having a bit of a do at the old lime and you've got half an idea, this may give you a few hints and tips on how best to go about it. But first, we need to prep all these walls and get them ready. So let's crack on with that. So when I say prepping, what do I mean by prepping? Well, obviously the walls are quite dusty, so we'll give them a bit of a brush off. And then we've got things like this brickwork here that's been pushed back. There is a drill hole in it, so I think somebody's had the old SDS in there and they've pushed the brickwork back. So we'll get them free, we'll bring them forward and reset them. And then that's good to go again. Above the window there, we have some laths. Now, we've got a wall plate above, and we've got over a doorway over there, a timber lintel. So we'll put some fresh laths onto those as well. You know, if we're going to go with lime, let's go the whole hog. We're not going to put a piece of board on it and mess about. We're going to do it with laths. There's also the old dowel bead that will need a good clean up, ready to take the fresh lime plaster. Now, this is your dowel bead. Some of you out there all know exactly what we're doing and what we're talking about. But this is a timber bead. It's fixed, rigid to the brickwork. And the way they used to do it, they used to put timber plugwood into the brick joints, and then they'd nail the timber bead onto that plugwood. And it's good and solid. But it's got many years of paint and paper and crap all over it. So what I'll do is I'll scrape all that back, and then we'll give it a nice sanding down, and we'll get it so it's like it was when it was first installed. So when we put our plaster to it, it gives it that nice clean corner. Now, we won't be putting a skim bead or anything onto this. That is your bead. And if you are doing a lime plastering job, or you're having a go at a lime plastering job, should I say, and you've never done it before, and you're stripping your walls, do not take your beads off. Unless they're full of something like woodworm, etc. But if they are, take them off, get rid of them, and replace them with timber bead again. It's a dowel bead. Right, so we're gonna start off with the old dowel bead. Now I'm going to use a rasp. Now this is a cheap one. This I have a lovely Marshalltown one that I use for board, but we'll use the cheap one just in case we get nails and things in the dowel. And you can see there how it's bringing that paint and everything off. And it's taking it back to that lovely timber. And that's coming up nice, that is. So we'll do that from top to bottom of that bead, and we'll get it back to that nice timber, and then we'll put a bit of fine sandpaper on it so it's lovely and smooth, to go with that nice new lovely and smooth white lime plaster. Okay, so that's your bead now clear of paint and plaster, etc. It's now like it was when it was first installed, and that's how we want it. It's had a sanding, but once we've completed this room, again it'll just get a very fine bit of sandpaper on it, because what will happen is this will become wet with the plaster, and the grain will lift and come out, and you don't want that. It'll look tatty when it's decorated in the future. So we use a little bit of fine, say wet and dry sandpaper, just to take that grain back flat again. So the next job is to fix the laths onto the lintel above the door. I've already put one on, but I'll just give you a quick watch now. This is a new lath, but I did use it just before Christmas on the landing ceiling for around the ceiling light. If anybody indeed did see that video, so I'm going to reuse it. There's nothing wrong with it. And all you do, you put it onto your timber. You leave a gap in between the timber and the lath there. And of course, it's got a couple of nails in it from when I used it last time. This, so you don't want your gaps. You don't want your gaps too big. I mean, I do tend to, when I'm going over timber, do me gaps a little bit wider than I do if I'm putting them onto a stud partition or a ceiling, for example, because the plaster needs a little bit more help to adhere to the timber at the back. Right, so we just need a little piece more for the end. And zip by magic, I have a little piece here. Just pop it on there like so. It's very easy doing laths. It's not complex. It is slow work though, compared to plasterboard. Right, so that's now the lintel above the door, prepped and ready. So the nails that you'd use for fixing your laths are these. The little tacks, the little ring nails. And these are the nails that they'd have used back in the, well, I think this one's Edwardian, so back in the Edwardian era. It's pretty much the same nails they used then. You can screw them. You probably have to drill them all and mess about with them. You know, it's easier to use the old lath nails. And of course, it's doing it correct. Now, the laths are these. Now, these aren't from your local DIY shop or anything like that. You need to go to somebody who specialises in heritage materials to buy your laths, because normal everyday pine from your DIY store won't do. I think these are birch. I think the birch. I could be wrong. I've forgotten now. I've had them a while, but they're most certainly not pine. Right. So enough about laths. Let's crack on repairing these bits of damaged brickwork. So we've got here some brickwork that's been pushed back. There is a drill hole in it, so I assume that somebody's drilled a hole to put something up and they push the brickwork back. So we're just going to try and loosen it off and bring them forward again. And to do that, again, because it's lime mortar, I'm just going to use the little pad saw and try and tease them forward by cutting into the joint. Now, it may not work, but if I have to remove and reset them, I will. I'll come out that way, so I'll take the bottom one out first. There we go. Right, so that's those out. We'll give the bed a bit of a chip off there. A bit more on there. Right, so that's all the bits of brickwork and things patched up now. Nothing to see there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a bit of scratch coat on these laths. Now, when you're going onto laths, you need to make sure that they're wet. So because it's only a bit here, I'm just using just a standard paintbrush and some water. just to give them a good saturation. And what that'll do is that'll take the suction out of the wood, the initial suction, so that the lime will stick to it. Not need to be too much, just enough to take that suction out. And I think we'll put a little bit on the brickwork above, because we'll be going over that just with a tiny bit of stuff. Now the reason that I'm putting a bit on here now, rather than just do it all in one when I do the scratch coat, is because it's quite deep just above this door. I mean, the brickwork is actually all over the place. So if I put some on now, it's what we call dubbing out. It just gives me half a chance when I come to do the scratch coat of getting this section on without it being too thick in one go. Right down there. Right, so that's all wet up now. So let's put a little bit of stuff on. Now this that we're going to use, it's a lime putty with a coarse plastering sand and a little bit of goat hair in it. A little dwarf trowel on this, because what I want to do is push it tight onto those laths, really tight on. So we'll do it in little bits. Because the tighter the coat, the better it'll stick. I mean, we've got a good 1.5 inches from the back of the architrave to the plasterwork down there, so we need to fill it out first, as I said. A little bit over the top where it's deep. Right, so what we need to do is put some deep scratches into that, so that the scratch coat, when we do put it on, adheres to what we've just done. And for doing that, use one of these. Okay. And you knock yourself one up out of some laths. I mean, this one, I went to a bit of trouble to make it, so it'll last me. And it's been coated and coated and coated with double boiled linseed oil to seal it. Right, what you do a triangular scratch on it. Like so. And that helps with things like your shrinkage and your drying out, etc. As well as giving the next coat a very good key. You don't want it neat, or should I say, you don't want it nice and smooth, etc. Because it's to give a key to that next coat. And that's pretty much how you finish your scratch coat as well. Now your scratch coat, bear in mind, is the first coat. Once that's set after a week, we can then put on what we call the float coat. which builds it out, and we use straight edges and daubers, etc., to get that lovely and flat. And then we use on that one what we call a devil float, which has some lath nails in it, and you do a figure of 8 scratches all over. You leave that to set in, and then you put your line putty finish on top of that, and you trowel that up and don't bother with scratches, obviously. And there you go. And a very good morning, chaps and chapettes, of course. Right, what are we doing? Well, we're back on this one. Didn't manage to get the scratch coat on. I said we're going to do it tomorrow. Well, we're well past tomorrow. It's now the 2nd of January. 2 reasons for that. One, I don't know if you can see there. They asked me to open up the old fire opening. So that took me a good few hours to do. Plus, I never managed to get the sand loaded into the van. The weather turned pretty nasty, and I didn't fancy doing that in the rain and the gale force winds. However, 2nd of January, it's now just coming up lunchtime. I've transported sand, I've loaded it up in the building, I've set the mixer up in the building, and I'm just about ready to start the scratch coat. So let's crack on with it. Okay, chaps, that's our mortar that we're going to be using for the scratch coat. It's a quick lime with a gritty plastering sand and some white goat hair. Pressing it tight in for that brickwork. Now bear in mind, if you are a novice at the old lime, just be aware that this stuff, you get it in your eyes, it's going to do some damage. So if you're not used to using it, maybe some eye protection. Right, so that's the scratch coat applied. It's on very thin. Well, I'll say very thin, probably, at a guess, 6-7 mil. It's taken to do, I think it's just under 3 meters, probably 2.5 meters there that we've got on. And it's taken two builders' buckets to do the job. Right, well, what's next? Well, we've got to go over it with the old scratching tool now. Because bear in mind, this is the scratch coat, and what was originally known as the cracking coat. Now, this particular coat, as I've said in the past, once I've applied it to the whole room, it then has to be left for a minimum of a week to fully cure, and then I can put my float coats on top of that. Now, my float coats, providing they've dried in, I can put my finishing coat on the following day. Okay, so now we're ready for the next step with the scratch coat, and that's to attack it with the old scratching tool. Now, as I said earlier, you can knock these up with some lath. It doesn't have to be new lath, you know, it could be some lath that you've taken out somewhere. I mean, like I said, I tend to make a decent job of these because they will last you quite a long time if you put a bit of effort in. Right, so next job. This is how you do the scratch. So we start in the top corner, the diagonal scratch. And keep repeating that now in one direction across the surface of the wall. Now you don't want to be pushing too hard because you don't want to go right through to the brick. Quite simple to do. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, so don't worry if you're doing it and you get it slightly out of shape or something like that. Right, and then what we do, we go the other way. Now you see there's a bit of a soft spot, so we'll just tuck that back in. Just tidy it up a little bit. You can see now how it's making the triangular shapes. Now that's very important when you're doing a scratch coat with lime. If it was sand and cement, you could just do your little wavy lines in it, that's fine. But with this, it has to be the triangular pattern. Now you don't have to use a scratching tool like this. You could use a plasterer's comb or something like that. You know, it'll do it equally as well. I prefer this because it does a slightly wider cut into the lime mortar itself. So again, giving a better key. But don't forget this coat here has to hold the weight of the float coat. You know, this may only be 5-6 mil thick, but the float coat, you know, that could be up to 15, even 20 mil, depending on how much we want to build it out to beads and things like that. For example, the old sash window framework and arcs, you know, because I'll have to build out to the back edge of those. So you can end up with quite a depth on it. So you want your scratches to be really deep to take that scratch coat and hold it on there. And like I said, you don't need to be dead neat with it. It doesn't have to be really precise. You know, obviously, spend a little bit of time and make it look half decent. But you don't have to go daft with it and have it perfect in shape. Now you'll note how I was dragging a bit off with the laying on trowel. So I'm putting it on and then I'm kind of putting a sharp angle on dragging it. So it's like a torn surface. We don't want it smooth. Don't forget, this is your scratch coat. This is your key for your float coats. So don't do it smooth and all neat and nice. That's not what you want. You want it rough. And then, like I said earlier, deep scratches into it to give it a really, really good key. Let's have a look at some of the do's and don'ts on this. Right, so of course this is a quicklime and aggregate mortar. Okay, and the only thing that you're going to add to your quicklime and your aggregate is animal hair, which could be goat, it could be horse, or it could be a combination of both as this is, and water. Nothing else. You don't want any admix or waterproofers, or you don't want anything else in it. It's purely quicklime, aggregate, hair and water. That's all you need, and it's very, very workable. Now, as a plasterer, you've possibly been working with a cement render at some point in your career. And of course you're adding waterproofers and retarders, admixes, to make it workable. Well, say for example you go and get yourself a gallon of fed to put in your render to fluff it up, to make it workable, or maybe free flow, something like that. Basically what it's doing is what lime does. That's all it's doing. It's just making it workable. And you probably find, in all honesty, if you were doing a top coat render and you weren't applying a waterproofer to it, you could use a hydrated lime. So you could do it at 511 and let it mix plenty. And it will fluff up and be workable without any chemical in it. Very, very good is lime. And like I've stated, with your scratch coat, thin, you want it thin. Thinner it is, the better it will grip turn bricks. Wet your brickwork up first. Don't go on dry. The reason that I started in the top corner there was because I've wet that up, but I've wet all of the bottom up first. And I'll just wet up that last little bit at the top. That will dribble down what I've done. That won't hurt it. It'll do it good if anything. And finish it off that way. Normally I'd wet up the whole wall, but I've run out of water. Yeah, I'll have to go and get some more out of the tap. Big job. Okay, so like I said, you want it rough. Travel on a bit of an angle, get it rough, and then nice deep scratches in the triangular shape. Don't get your old comb and give it that. It's wrong. Just don't do it. It's not sand and cement. Right, let's crack on and get this one. Well, there you go, people. That's the end of the day. And it's also the end of the scratch coats. They're all on now, as you can see. So what do we do next? Well, apart from having to clean up and a brew, we'll leave it. We'll leave it for a week, minimum a week, to stiffen up, to harden up. And hopefully any cracking that's going to occur will occur in this coat. But to be honest with you, I don't think we're going to have a problem with it cracking. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but I don't think we will, because the air's very moist at the moment and cold. I mean, I've got a little panel heater on in here just to keep temperature up, because it's probably about 1 outside at the minute. But yeah, so I don't think it'll crack anyway. You know, it's got a nice slow set on it, which is what we want. So we'll cut this this video here now for this particular episode of part 1 of the lime plastering. In part 2, I shall be applying the float coats. So if you've enjoyed this particular video, look out for video number 2. And of course, once that's completed, then it's, day after that will be the old finishing coats. Which again, if you're not a line plasterer, or indeed if you're not a plasterer, you'll probably find it interesting. Right, don't forget, thumbs up, helps with the channel, and don't forget to subscribe if you've enjoyed, and you've not subscribed yet. It doesn't cost anything to do either. It's completely free. Right, so we'll see you next week for another episode of buggering about with old buildings.